Welcome to Seniors on the Move. We are lucky today. We're going to give you some really usable information, and everyone has questions on this subject. It's called money. We're lucky to have Eileen Dawson with us today. She's a professional money coach. I know, I wish you could all be here and just ask her questions, right? She began her career in social work, human resources, and then her own consulting firm, Dawson Services. Money coaching focuses on helping individuals, couples, and groups too. That's, to me, I don't know how you do it, to be honest. With personal finance information, specializing in debt management. She holds a bachelor's in psychology from Framingham State and a master's degree in human resource management from Emmanuel College in Boston. She grew up with 5 siblings. More girls than boys, though.
More boys.
More boys, that's not good, unless they spoiled you.
No.
And it is the oldest of the girls. She lives in Northborough with a husband of 27 years and 3 children, Kate, Brian, and Maureen, beautiful Irish names. Her passion has always been teaching others and began Dawson Services in 2020, and we all know what happened that year. That was the big COVID deal, wasn't it?
It was.
Did you have to stop everything, or did you continue?
It actually picked up.
It picked up?
Yeah, because
That's
Zoom came on the scene, and all of a sudden there was lots to,
Wow.
It opened up doors to the whole country or the whole world to be able to teach.
Good for you. That's fantastic. Her passion has always been teaching others, and she began Dawson Services in 2020. I may have repeated that. As the pandemic began to grow, she works all over the country with people of all ages, education, family environments, career backgrounds, and financial income. How much traveling do you do?
I don't do a lot of traveling. Most
But you
of it's
would
local.
if it was something that
I
you
may
would
be
needed.
going to. I may be going to Seattle at some point in the next few months. So
that's
I have.
really across the country,
Yeah.
isn't it?
But most of it's local.
Let's talk about the 4 keys to get out of debt. Maybe you can help me.
Well, there's 4 keys. There's lots more, but these particular 4 ones will always guide people in the right direction.
Okay.
And so the first key is, if you don't have the money, then don't buy it. That's a big one.
Yeah.
So we have to take a look at what our income is, and then actually what are we spending. So we have to kind of track it a bit to see. The first one actually is live below your means. I did the second one, but the first one's actually live below your means. So whatever it is that you're making, you got to live on less than that.
Okay,
That's a
it
big one.
sounds good. What else can you tell us?
The third is to be looking into your accounts regularly.
Yeah.
Being able to look at your
yeah.
bank accounts and your statements and just take a look at where's the money going. Sometimes we don't even realize that.
We don't.
No, we might have 70 transactions in a month and we thought we had 10. It's like, where are those 70 transactions coming from? And sometimes they're small little ones, but then they add up to be a big one.
Like Amazon, yeah,
Amazon
for sure.
is definitely a difficult.
That has a hefty fee too, doesn't it? Amazon does.
And it's impulsive. It's so easy to just,
It really is.
arrives on our doorstep that day or the next
know.
day.
I have to admit, I have found things from 20, 30 years ago that I didn't know existed. But let's talk about the important things now. What else? Do we have any more keys?
The last key would be is if you have a partner or you have a spouse, whoever it is that you share money with, there has to be the communication. It can't just be one person that's doing it all. It has to be a discussion with both people.
All right. What about Social Security? Or don't you go into that? I mean, some people are living on it.
Yeah, they are.
And what kind of advice would you give to them? I mean, what can they do about it? Just be careful?
Yeah, I mean, the big thing is, there's 2 ways that you can, deal with financial, staying out of debt, getting out of debt. And one would be if there's any way that there could be some increase in income. So for some seniors, if they have the ability to do a little bit of work, then that can bring up their income from the Social Security. Or pension, if somebody gets pensions. I know pensions aren't as common as they used to be.
No, they're not, unfortunately.
But to be able to have that. Some people have disability, and disability income sometimes can be higher than the regular income if they qualify. Or the other thing is, the decreased expenses. Sometimes it could be negotiations, let's say, with medical bills and that type of thing, if companies understand,
And what about discounts and things like that? there are things for seniors that they're not even aware of. AARP does a good job with those.
Yeah, that's very true.
You know, they could.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know what the percentage of, especially women, is that are on Social Security and living by themselves too.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they do the best they can, and maybe they always have had shortages. But what else do we need to know? What about Medicare? You familiar, really familiar with Medicare?
You know, I don't have a lot of experience with Medicare. I think it's its own, knowledge. The whole thing. In terms of the expertise within that realm, Medicaid is its own.
It is,
thing,
yeah.
So working with Social Security on that, and
I don't know if you want to touch upon this 401k. I mean, I had one when I stopped working, but boy, it went down so darn fast. I couldn't believe it. So why don't you tell me then what you do mostly? What kind of work do you do with
So most of the work that I do is not in the retirement space necessarily. I do work in partnership with a few people that are experts in Roth 401ks and IRAs and all the retirement type money. Yeah. Oftentimes I'm working with some of their clients or pre-clients to be able to get their financial in a better situation so that they can start to save in retirement.
That's good.
So,
all right. So, trying to think of what else. I had so many questions for you, and what I should have done was, all right. What about end of life? Do you have anything to do with that? Preparing for the future. I mean, for people that can't afford it, somewhat. Do you delve in that at all, or?
I think it depends on what people, want. Some people want to be able to pay for the stones, so their kids don't have to pay for it, or the plots, or maybe just the funeral itself, or a meal, or both, that kind of thing. So certainly my goal would be to move them in that direction, but we got to get them out of debt before they can pay for that. So it's, oftentimes
and that
before.
may never happen. How did you get into this?
It's funny because my background was human resources and I did recruiting. I stayed home and worked from home long before people were working from home. I started in 2012 and I was a technical recruiter. And I wanted to do that instead of the management because it was a lot. I could break off and do far less hours and be able to raise my 3 kids. So, if somebody had an ear infection, I can go and get it. I'm not in the middle of a big, meeting as a director of HR kind of thing. So I did that for several years. And then as my kids got a little bit older, I wanted to do something else. I wanted to be able to look and say, you know what, I wake up on Sunday, and I can't wait for the week to start. I wake up on Monday and I'm excited about something. And so I started doing some soul searching in 2019 and said, what do I want to do? I'm like, I want to teach. I want to teach like I did earlier in my career in college and be able to teach folks that, had challenges, jobs, and, their managers, et cetera. And so I started looking around where I could teach, but I didn't want to go for another master's degree because I knew I had 3 kids to get through college. So I started looking, and my son said, Mom, why don't you teach about money and debts and that kind of thing? You're such a nerd. You're always looking at, these shows on TV and you're reading these books and on all your social life, I feel like you're always, looking at the money stuff. So I thought, well, geez, maybe there is an opportunity for that. So I started doing some research, et cetera, and I found the Ramsey program. And I remember seeing him on TV like 20 years ago, and he talked about debt. And I thought, well, geez, it might be a good way to go.
Yeah.
So I started doing more research, and I went and I trained, and that's kind of how I became a coach. And the focus is definitely on debt because that's where most people are at. Most people are trying to get out of debt.
So this is it Randy?
Ramsey.
Ramsey. And what is that exactly?
So it's a training. It was a training that was probably 100 hours or so to get certified. And I learned about all kinds of things from debts to touching on retirement, touching on insurance and that type of thing. Not deep dive. Like I don't deep dive. I can certainly help people. Looking into insurance and that kind of thing. It's not necessarily my specialty, but where most people are at is that a lot of people are in debt. About 70% of the United States is in debt. So if you look down your street and it's a mile long, 70% of those people are living paycheck to paycheck. Wow. So that's where my space is I stay in that.
Do you have friends that call you and family and ask you questions all the time?
I do. I do. Yeah, it's funny. I was at a wake a couple months ago, and it was my sister-in-law's brother, and he jumped. He was the oldest, and he jumped at the front of the line and said, "I'm paying my house off in 3 months." You know, it was like not, "Hi, Eileen, how are you?" You know, it was just, "I'm paying my house off in 3 months," because he knew I was a money coach, and he was excited about it. You know, and so I sometimes get that kind, you know, those kinds of things when people know what I do, and it's exciting. You know, I had another relative that called me and said, "I have 4 months and I'm going to have that, you know, that mortgage paid off." And I said, "And when you do, you go outside and you take your shoes and socks off and you walk around saying it's yours." You know, and people can do the same thing even with credit cards. You know, if somebody's got, you know, $1,000 here, $500 here on one, or, you know, $10,000, as they pay those down, it's very, very exciting because it's progress. It's progress. Progress is a wonderful thing.
It is. What about the stock market? Do you do anything? I mean, do you advise at all, or is that just not your?
You know, I would tend to you know, have somebody go off to a financial advisor, or sometimes we call them financial planners. I've got a few that I like to talk to, and you know, but their expertise is within securities and that type of thing. So I can do basic things. You know, if someone said, "What do you think of a Roth IRA?" I'm like, "I love them." You know, because they have so many tax advantages, et cetera. But I won't necessarily advise people on, you need to do this fund, and, you know, this is your risk. And I tend to stay away from that just because it's not my lane of education.
All right. Now, what about groups? You work with groups?
I do.
Give us an example of that, what you do exactly.
I do. Well, I have a business school that I'm going to be doing 2 trainings for. One is with their undergraduates, and the other is with their graduate students. And, of course, the big thing that people always, you know, look at is, how am I going to afford this? How am I going to afford to go back to school? Or how am I going to afford to go to school in the first place? So one of the trainings is going to be geared towards the students that are going to be going into undergraduate. You know, they will get a good return on their investment because it's a business school, and they'll be coming out as an accountant or some of these other roles that, you know, are very focused. But how do you pay for it? You know, and there's various ways you could pay for it. Some people go to community college first, like my son, and then, you know, flip up to an institution and be able to, you know, go. It's not going to be as expensive because they, you know, they worked at the community college first. And then, you know, to be able to take out grants. There's so many grants. I was talking with someone recently, and she said, I was at Bridgewater State where my youngest might go, and she said, there's grants all the time. These companies call me and say, don't you have any students that would apply for this? You know, we have this $500.
They're actually asking.
They're asking.
It.
It's not the first person that's actually asked that. Because people don't apply. They think they're not going to get them, or I don't know if I want to put the work in or whatever. And so they take out loans. But if you can have scholarships instead of loans, it's free money. You know, grants, sometimes you can be working on a grant at a school, you know. So when I do a group, it's usually 45 minutes or so. It's about people's, you know, attention span to be able to talk about money. It overwhelms a lot. It exhausts people.
I've tended to ignore it, actually.
Yeah, people get exhausted.
But I shouldn't.
Talking about money and learning about money. So, but then this Q&A. So a lot of times it's focusing on, you know, some of it is the, what does it look like demographically? What does the average person have on credit card debt? What does the average person have on home debt? You know, and these kinds of things. What's the average, you know, the information I have on the credit card is 17%, but right now they're going up to 25 or 30. That's a lot of money when people are having credit cards that are that high.
I saw one for 30. I almost fainted.
It's if you had that on your retirement, you know, you'd be able to go into retirement so quickly if you had a 30% return, you know. So, but you don't want it to work in the wrong direction, because then you just end up owing more and more and more. I have one client that has a 400% pay loan, and it started at 400 and now it's 2,400 because it builds so quickly. And
things have changed.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that I try to steer people away from, and that would be one of them.
Yeah, no. As far as seniors go, do you do a lot of it, working with seniors, or their families maybe? Or
yeah, there's definitely families. I've had clients that, you know, are working with their parents. Their parents might be living with them, or they might be living in another place, and the kids are trying to help them, you know, or the parents might be trying to help the kids. So, you know, depending on which, sometimes it's both. I could be working with both.
Yeah. What else do we need to know about the State of the Union? You know, what's going on in our world with money? My gosh. what the government is spending too. And
Oh yeah, the $33 trillion.
Yeah.
We each owe $100,000 if we were to make the balance the budget.
Is that right?
Yeah, that's a lot.
Oh, be darned.
People don't even make that. Most people don't even make. The average income is in the 60s.
It is.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now tell us about COVID. During COVID, what did you talk about and who with? I mean, were people panicky? Did they feel they were going to be losing their money? Or I know a lot of them were out of work.
Yeah, I mean,
know that.
There were definitely restaurant owners that I talked with that, a lot of times their money is coming from the alcohol, not from the takeout.
That's
So
true,
that
too.
really
Yeah.
was a real strain on a lot of businesses.
That's
Individuals,
sad.
it depends. There were some individuals that definitely in the fields where they had to go into the office or they, were fire and police. Well, of course they had to work. Same with the nurses and the doctors.
Sure.
So, but there definitely was some industries, the daycare center owners and some of these other places that closed,
Yeah.
because of COVID.
It was awful, and we were all affected by it too.
Mhm.
And I guess we're still getting some cases of it. People are still coming down with it, and of course we're getting our shots. We're hoping that's going to help us. We'll see. I just had mine last week. What else can we talk about? We have a few minutes left here. What else would you like to tell us about? Anything that you do or have done? Have you ever been on a talk show before, a TV talk show?
I have not been on a TV talk show.
Oh, that's wonderful then.
I
hope-
did. I was on a Zoom with the Southborough Family Services. I was on a talk show with them last year, or maybe
Yeah.
at the end of 2021, and that was interesting. We were talking about mental health and how important mental health is, and of course, it was totally appropriate
Yes,
given COVID. COVID has created an incredible amount of anxiety for people.
it has. That's true.
And so we're trying to wade through that with, getting people back to a better place. These kids, that didn't have school for a while, and and they're
Yeah.
there's a little bit of delay and a
Sure.
lot of social
And
social.
the cost. Excuse me. The cost of groceries, especially for our seniors.
It's
I remember
expensive.
I would spend $20 every 2 weeks because I
Yeah.
live by myself,
Yeah,
and I'm seeing $80.
yeah.
I don't even buy that much meat, or it's crazy.
It is crazy. It is crazy. Supposedly the interest rate was 7%, but it sure feels like a lot more with food.
Oh,
than
and it's
that.
not. It doesn't seem to be going down. Don't quote me on this, folks, because I don't know for sure. Maybe some things we're seeing a little difference.
Yeah.
But are either of your daughters interested in doing what you do? And
That's a good question. I mean, one's a nurse, so she definitely. Well, I put her up for a challenge. I put her up for a challenge recently, and I said, "Hey, listen, Kate, because she likes to buy clothes, and she knows that's her weakness.
Yeah.
So I said, if you can keep it under $75 a month in September, October, and November, so that would be $225. I will take you out to wherever you want to go to lunch." She goes, "You're on, Mom." So far. She did 60 the first month, then she did like 90. And I'm like, okay, all right, you're dipping in here. You only get 225. She goes, "No, Mom, I'll be able to do it," kind of thing. So sometimes to put them up to a challenge, I've got my son's, he's a little bit more challenging. And then my 17-year-old who's going on 30, she's really good with money.
Oh, she
Yeah,
is.
she wants to be a pilot, so if she ends up continuing on that
God,
course,
that's
that's going to be an interesting financial,
Yeah.
trying to
Never
navigate
thought
all
about
that.
what that requires. How much education and
Yeah,
the cost of that. But if another female flyer, that's good.
yeah. Hopefully she'll stick with that. So, but yeah, it's a couple $1,000 to be able to do all the flying lessons and everything else. So yeah. It's going to require a lot of creativity, a lot of loans, a lot of, I want to stay away from loans, go for the grants and the scholarships and, that type of thing. Possibly the military is the way to go too, that she might do.
Wow.
So,
That's great.
yeah.
I don't want to miss anything. I want to make sure I keep you here until I get everything answered. The credit card thing, though. If you don't have a lot of money, you tend to charge things. And I mean, what would be your advice for that, for someone who doesn't have a lot of income? And
I think that a lot of people spend money on credit cards that they don't realize that they're spending. Another tip, if I was to put a tip 5 down, it would be, what's a need? and what's a want.
Yeah. That's
Because if we're buying wants,
Yeah.
which all of us do, it gets us in trouble and it gets in the way of our needs.
It does. It really.
So those are
Excuse
some
me.
of the basic things, that I would, talk with people about. Is
Yeah.
really trying. If you can't increase the income, to be able to decrease those expenses,
Okay.
so that it just isn't.
What about the difference between you and an accountant? It seems like you do a lot more.
Well, an accountant really focuses, a lot of them focus on all the details of the money. I like to go into an app called everydollar.com. Because then people can put down their income sources. It's nice and easy. I love that kind of system where it will do all the math for me and tell me how am I doing. Do I have extra money every month? Do I not? Writing down all the expenses. It will calculate stuff for people. I love it because it's just simple. Now if seniors have a computer, or if they even if they have, it's an app that's easy. And I usually will teach people how to use that, so that way they can actually see what's going on. Like, where's that $30 bill? What is that $30 bill? Is that something that I need to have? Is it something I'm not even using? Like gym memberships that people, have, and they don't realize they're spending $75 a month, and they've been doing it for 2 years and they haven't been using it. There's a lot of that kind of stuff. Or can I get a better deal on my phone? Especially for seniors, you're right. They have a lot of discounts, and it's worth
really
it to
do,
always
yes.
ask wherever they're looking at, even if you ask a restaurant, what's your senior discount? And if they say we don't have one, okay, well, so.
Yeah.
But they might, or they might
tend
make
not
up
to
one.
ask, don't we?
Yeah, and a lot of times people will say, let me ask my manager. And they might make up one.
That's cute. I like that.
I remember
That's
when I was in Ireland with a family, there were 8 of us, and my aunts kept asking, so what's your discount? What's your group discount? And they're like, oh, well, we don't really have one. I said, could you ask your manager? And sure enough, they'd give us 10 or 15% off almost every single thing that we did.
Just what else would you like to leave us with? Anything at all? Just be careful, especially seniors, because
I
that's who
think
watches.
a lot of it is awareness. To be aware of what's going on.
Yes.
To be paying attention, whether the money is, sometimes people don't realize they have money in the budget.
Oh.
But it's that sometimes things are costing money that they don't need.
That's true too.
What
about this money that the government tells us to ask for and find out if we have any money? It's a government agency. It might have been an insurance policy that you didn't cash in, or
Is that the Mass? There's a Mass
it's
state
the
one?
mass.gov something.
Yeah.
Yes.
I haven't looked into that.
I'm kind of
but
nervous about it, giving my information and
Yeah,
stuff.
I think that I
This
don't
is a
always
good
know what I
point.
trust. Similar to when you're looking for your credit, your credit score, you want to make sure you go to reputable places. There's some
Yes.
that will sometimes say, come here and we'll give you your credit score. And you're like, well, you're going in my bank account? Like, you have to be really skeptical
You do.
about things.
There's terrible things going on online
Yeah,
right now.
I received something recently that said I had $5,000 in an old 401k from the 90s. And it was, half printed on the paper, and, I
Really?
called the company that I worked for, and they haven't gotten back to me. Then they said, send an email, and I didn't hear back. And I'm really kind of wondering, like, I probably did roll over my 401k into an IRA. I can't imagine I would have left $5,000 with the company.
Yeah, that
But
doesn't. That
you
doesn't
don't know
sound
what
right.
that,
I
always be
read,
skeptical.
Yes, I read AARP magazine, the first page to the last, and they give a lot of information.
Good information.
on money for us, and I have found it to be true. Everything that I've heard. We had Mike Festa here a couple of shows ago, and he talked about caregivers, and that they're going to be compensated a little bit. So that also would appear in AARP, and it would tell you exactly what's happening with that. So.
And the senior centers are always so full of information
They
too,
really
aren't they?
are, yes.
I know, or like Bay Path in Westboro, I know is very active.
Good point. I'm
Yeah.
glad you mentioned
They
that.
did a lot of
It's
stuff for
there.
my
It's-
parents.
all that information is there.
Transportation. Yeah, my dad had a lot of the services. Sometimes they'll bring in, some home care, some respite for a
Yes.
few hours, that type of thing. So there's lots of
Sure.
services, but for people to go to where they know, some of these, they're just a wealth of information, and we don't even know they are.
Yes, and there's something called Shine that will help you to find the best insurance for yourself. That was so confusing to me. And I got a postcard in the mail, and I talked to a really nice guy, and he told me exactly what I would need being a diabetic, because that runs into some money too.
Yeah.
And that was probably the best information I ever got. So the information is out there, but you have to look and you have to read. You might hear about it on TV. You never know.
Mm-hmm.
But for some seniors, it's a real challenge, you know, and
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to help you a little bit, and I hope you did, you know, get some information today that you can use. And we've got about 4 minutes left. Maybe I could sing to you. What do you think? Huh? I would like to someday have a show where you could call in and ask questions. We talked about that for a while, a few years ago. That would be nice too. Boy, you're sharp. I don't think that would be a problem for you at all. It might be for some people. They might be a little nervous about that, even myself. But this is the place to find out all this good stuff. And I've been doing this for 20 years, believe it or not. There wasn't much around here for seniors. And I started the show in another studio and then moved to another studio and then here. This is the third one. They have a great staff here. They're very helpful. They do a lot for everybody, always moving around. So I'm going to close with that. And I want to thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
And you can come back again, too, if anything changes. Thank you. So we're going to see you next time, and bye for now.